Hi, I'm Ben, and if you're new to this channel, I am a keyboard content creator, and lately I've been observing some interesting trends in the resale or secondhand market for luxury keyboards. Being a content creator means that I've built many keyboards on this channel, from over $1,000 all the way down to sub $100. While I would love to keep them all, the reality is I often have to sell them to fund new projects and keep the content flowing here. It's often bittersweet, but it's also led me to notice something fascinating which I want to share with you today. The last few years for custom mechanical keyboard prices have been a wild ride to say the least, with certain high demand boards, especially custom kits and rare switches, reaching unprecedented levels on the aftermarket. Some boards sold for multiples of their original value. For example, in early 2022, keyboards like the Keycard No. 2 sold for $3,000, while rare sets of GMK keycaps like the GMK Olivia peaked at $500 and above. A decade ago, it would have been impossible to imagine such numbers for peripherals like keyboards. Backtracking to 2015, you could argue that owning a custom mechanical keyboard was more of a hobbyist niche or a novelty, especially with the rise in popularity of mechanical gaming keyboards in big box stores like Best Buy and Micro Center. Yet, demand for mechanical keyboards, particularly in the custom and enthusiast market, have remained strong. Looking at the broader industry though, mass-produced membrane keyboards have seen a decline over the years, dropping in total market share as people move towards better constructed keyboards. But custom keyboards, despite growing inflation and supply chain issues, have a relatively inelastic demand. When we analyze the production of mechanical keyboards, the numbers might show a slight drop in the mainstream market, mainly in the lower cost entry-level segment. However, what became clear in recent years is that mechanical keyboards, especially custom builds, began to mean something different to enthusiasts. It's no longer just about utility. The switch from a membrane or scissor switch style keyboards to mechanical is often fueled by a desire for something more premium. Design, feel, and even self-expression that mass market keyboards cannot offer. Unlike disposable electronics, which are replaceable every few years, custom mechanical keyboards offer longevity, unique craftsmanship, and endless personalization. They have diverged from the path of traditional peripherals and now occupy a space where they are seen as collectibles, reflecting their owner's taste and preferences. Custom keyboards can become personal art pieces to, quite literally, be put on shelves for display, something no pre-built mass market products can match. This shift in perspective has created unprecedented demand for keyboards from well-marketed brands like Keycult, Rama, and TGR, which are now more sought after than ever before. This redefining of the market has fueled the craze we see today. What was once a small community of enthusiasts quickly grew into something much larger. The tipping point definitively came in 2020 during the COVID global lockdowns, when people started to dive deeper into mechanical keyboards to improve their home office setups. The rising fascination with keyboard kits, keycaps, and even artisan keycaps began to break through into the mainstream. And suddenly, builds that once only appealed to hardcore hobbyists were attracting attention from gamers, typists, and casual users alike. If I had to point to a moment when the keyboard community collided with mainstream awareness, it would be during the group buy era of 2021, when keyboard kits from well-known community members and designers like Wilbur and AI03 were consistently selling out. Some boards became so coveted that they started to be seen as status symbols in the community. This surge in interest led to long waiting lists for popular kits and forced custom designers and manufacturers to adapt quickly to meet growing demand. Meanwhile, some keyboard and accessory manufacturers that once operated quietly or had low demand were now gaining mainstream visibility. The limited production runs combined with skyrocketing interest created the perfect storm for prices to spiral out of control. Kits that usually retail at group buy prices for $500 were quickly being flipped on the aftermarket for 2 or even 3 times the original price. Custom keyboards became an exclusive product, and being able to grab one during a group buy meant instant bragging rights. This naturally led to a new kind of buyer, those that didn't just want a better typing experience, but who were chasing exclusivity, knowing that they had something rare that others couldn't easily get. At the same time, markets like China saw a significant rise in interest in custom keyboards, thanks to increased disposable income and a growing demand for unique products. This surge in global demand only accelerated the trend. Brands began opening sales channels to meet the needs of international customers, while community-driven events like keyboard meetups exploded in popularity. With all this growing interest, the aftermarket soon followed suit, and reselling became a booming business. Many people saw this as an opportunity to make quick profits by reselling custom kits and keycap sets at inflated prices. Authorized vendors started selling out their allocations within minutes, and there were even cases where keyboards were being pre-sold before sale was even announced officially. If you didn't pay extra for a commission build, there was almost no chance that you can purchase that particular keyboard. Then, 2020 came along, putting an unexpected halt to many industries, including mechanical keyboard production. Many designers and small-scale manufacturers were suddenly unable to fulfill their orders as factories closed. The already slow group buy process, which often took months to complete, was delayed even further. This caused a huge backlog in production, frustrating both customers and sellers. Without the ability to produce new kits on time, the aftermarket exploded even further, driving prices to unsustainable levels. Producing a custom keyboard kit isn't as straightforward as mass producing a pre-built. Each part, from the case to the PCB, needs to be carefully crafted and tested. This multiple-step process involves various stages, from the initial design and prototyping to PCB production, assembly, and finally packaging. When lockdowns disrupted production lines, one small delay in any of these stages could halt the entire process, causing long wait times for consumers who had already paid their kits months in advance. Most manufacturers and designers work in small, specialized teams, meaning that if one person fell sick, or if there's a delay in sourcing materials like aluminum for cases or plastic molds for switches and keycaps, the entire project gets delayed. Many smaller scale manufacturers also rely on international suppliers for certain parts like PCBs, gaskets, or even packaging foams, which created additional complications as global shipping was heavily impacted. This combination of specialized labor and disrupted supply chains led to an enormous slowdown in the production of custom keyboard kits. With people wondering if working from home will become the new norm, many splurged on custom keyboards, perhaps as a way of escapism, further driving demand for limited runs. This created a scenario where some buyers were willing to pay astronomical amounts just to get their hands on a keyboard that they could have bought for retail months earlier. During this period, we also saw an influx of cash into the market as people were looking to spend their stimulus checks and additional savings. With travel and entertainment largely unavailable, people turned to discretionary hobbies and luxury items. The snowball effect from increased liquidity and lockdown consumerism made the keyboard market hotter than ever, especially for rare limited edition kits. Certain designers became the equivalent of fashion icons, where owning one of their creations was considered a symbol of status. I am reminded of the concept of Simmelian distinction, named after sociologist George Simmel. Simmel observed that in fashion and consumer behavior, elites often adopt unique styles of products to distinguish themselves from the masses, only for those trends to be eventually imitated by those in the lower strata. This imitation pushes the elite to seek new, more exclusive ways to differentiate themselves. Early adopters and hobbyists sought after rare, high-quality components to set themselves apart, creating a niche market. As the trend grew and more people entered the space, it pushed enthusiasts to seek even more expensive, limited edition designs to maintain their status in the community. The allure of these keyboards wasn't just their tactile feel or sound, but the social distinction that came along with owning something rare and desirable, leading to an ongoing Simmelian cycle of exclusivity. This mirrors Simmel's theory, where the act of acquiring such products becomes a continuous chase for uniqueness and prestige in a consumer-driven hierarchy. During the boom from 2020 to 2022, we saw this phenomenon play out in full. Keyboard kits and keycap sets that were originally hard to obtain became even harder for people to do so as their prices skyrocketed and scalpers began treating keyboards as investments. Meanwhile, legitimate hobbyists who couldn't get their hands on a Keycult or a GMK Darling turned to other options, elevating lesser-known brands like Our Lab, Matrix Lab, EPPT, and even iFei to a similar status. This trickle-down effect meant that the entire enthusiast market surged, with even mid-tier keyboards seeing significant price increases. It was really an unprecedented time. Designers couldn't keep up with demand, and as soon as a new kit was ready, there were hundreds and thousands of people lining up to buy it. The secondary market, driven by scarcity and speculation, peaked in early 2022, with no signs of slowing down. However, as we now know, things were about to take a sharp turn. In the months that followed, the market saw a massive correction. According to listings from MapMarket, prices for some of the most sought-after kits have fallen by over 37%. The hardest hit products were the ones that saw the most speculative gains during the boom. But what caused this drastic decline? The decline was largely triggered by the same factors that led to the initial boom: changes in consumer behavior and global economics. As the world began to return to a pace of normalcy post-lockdown, people shifted their spending away from hobbies like keyboards. Spending frenzy subsided as inflation rose to record highs, leading to a correction in the market. What was once a booming market filled with impulse purchases during lockdowns transformed into a more cautious space. Buyers who once splurged on luxury keyboards were now more selective, putting their money elsewhere as other priorities like travel emerged. Furthermore, some international markets, particularly in Asia, were slower to recover, affecting global demand. As the market slowed, sellers found it harder to offload high-end keyboards, especially when prices stagnated. Eventually, some vendors and designers had to close down because of poor revenue and cash flow management. Consequently, many speculative investors began dumping their high-value limited edition keyboards, which were no longer seen as investment pieces with skyrocketing value. The electronic raffles to group buy sites, which once had been overwhelming, dropped off as well. The market for reselling custom keyboards became saturated, and buyers no longer view these products as the exclusive, must-have items that they have been wanting during the height of the craze. Manufacturers who had ramped up production just to meet the demand surge were caught in a similar bind. Like in other industries, manufacturing had been scaled up to account for the explosive growth in 2020 and 2021. However, by the time these keyboards hit the market, consumer enthusiasm had waned. Forecasting demand in such a volatile market proved to be a challenge, and many companies found themselves overproducing, contributing to the oversupply problem that further reduced exclusivity. Which brings me to another significant issue: pricing. With inflation driving up the cost of both materials and labor, vendors and designers were forced to raise their prices to maintain profitability. At the same time, they were keeping an eye on the secondary market, where resellers were making huge profits on limited edition runs. Some small designers increased their prices to keep pace with this trend and keep a fuss of exclusivity, which ultimately hurt demand as buyers felt less inclined to purchase newer products at such inflated prices. As a result, the gap between retail and resale values narrowed. And as more new products began to hit the hands of everyday consumers, the secondary market, which had once been a treasure trove for hardcore enthusiasts and investors, became flooded with inventory. Sellers who were banking on continued price increases found themselves forced to sell at a loss. Models that had once commanded a premium saw their values plummet, causing panic among resellers. In the past year, however, the market has begun to stabilize. Waiting lists for custom keyboards have shortened, and while some of the most hyped models still fetch a premium, the overall trend has been towards a more realistic pricing. Mellatrix Zoom lineup, QWERTY Keys, Neo and QK lineups are but some examples. The bubble has definitely popped, but this isn't necessarily bad news for everyone. If you look at the market over a longer period of time, the recent downturn begins to look more like a correction rather than a collapse. Quality and innovative keyboards like those from Mode Designs have still retained their value when viewed over a 5-year window, and the pieces that were most affected by the downturn were those that gained comet-like popularity at the height of the hype. Another thing to consider is that the extreme growth that we saw in 2020 and 2021 was never going to be sustainable. The custom keyboard market, like many luxury industries, has always been cyclical. The rapid rise in value attracted opportunists who were less interested in the craftsmanship and were more focused on short-term gains. Now that the market has corrected, many of them abandoned ship, leaving behind a more balanced ecosystem driven by genuine enthusiasts. The network of manufacturers, vendors, and community members expanded, and the overall quality of keyboards rose. Uneven anodization, poor manufacturing tolerances, mini USB ports, soldered-only PCBs are a thing of the past now. There may still be minor corrections in the future, but that's not something enthusiasts should be worried about. If you're in the keyboard community because you love the artistry, the engineering, and tactile satisfaction of these products like me, then the recent market changes are actually beneficial. The rush of people who were only in on the financial gain is fading, and the community is returning to its roots, a shared appreciation for a niche but rewarding hobby. And that means that you and I can lay our hands on new but cheaper products, satisfying our desire to keep trying new designs. Therefore, while it is important to be aware of market fluctuations, remember that the custom keyboard scene has always been about passion first. The massive boom we saw was an anomaly. It's definitely not the norm. Now that things are settling down, the focus can shift back to what really matters: building and enjoying the keyboards you love. And that's really the key takeaway here. If you're in the hobby because you love the craftsmanship, the tactile feel, the aesthetics of custom mechanical keyboards, then the market's prices of going up and down would not affect your enjoyment. Sure, it's worth keeping an eye on, but at the end of the day, buy the keyboards that bring you joy, not the ones that promise the highest returns. Alright, I'm done. If you like this video, make sure you check out the one where I did a deep dive into why EPO Maker is so hated by the keyboard community. See ya!